Thank you for joining us this morning. Of course, lots of Londoners concerned any price rise in anything these days. We're watching everything so carefully. What are your residents' reaction to this proposal? And can you just talk me through it a little bit and kind of how it would work for people who are really struggling right now?
Yeah, this is not an easy decision for any local authority to make. And Suzanne has just gone through the history there of the £1.6 billion of debt that we have as a council. And we only have assets worth about 300 million. So the reality is we have no means of selling property or paying down that debt. So we've been talking to government about how we can restore sustainable local government to Croydon. And an element of that is around having to increase council tax. And it's really not an easy decision to make. You know, I know it's going to hit people hard. We're in a difficult time at the moment as it is. But it's a tough decision, but it's one that we have to make in order to get back to some sort of normality here in Croydon, because we can't carry on, just keep borrowing, because it has to be paid for at some point in time.
Of course it does. Jason, I wanted to ask you, if this goes through and you do put on that 15% rise in council tax, and I understand, of course, there's historic debt there. Croydon has kind of effectively gone bankrupt 3 times. There's huge financial issues there. I understand the thinking behind why you would do it. How much would that bring into the council for the whole per year, if you will? If you raise it by 15% across the borough, how much does that put in your coffers, if you will?
It will bring in around £22 million per year. So by bringing in that £22 million per year, that means that over a 3-year period, we will not have to borrow another £60 million or not have to make cuts every year of £22 million. We're already proposing savings and cuts next year of some £36 million to try and get our books balanced here in Croydon. If we were not to have this increase, we'd be putting another £22 million on top of that figure, which is, just not sustainable. We have to get Croydon back to a place where we can function properly as a normal local authority. But I know residents will be very upset. I'm frankly upset that we're having to do this and angry that we're having to put these high increases through because of the reckless behaviour of previous people here in Croydon.
When you were elected in May 2022, you made the promise that you would fix the finances. This seems to be one of the measures that you're inputting to fix those finances. Do you think you can? The debt is obviously huge. Are you confident that this will go towards fixing that and it's something that you can do?
I think this is the first step towards getting Croydon's finances fixed. I started the opening the books exercise when I came into office, which brought to light even more legacy issues and historic issues around the council's finances and what had happened in recent years. So I think this is the first step, but we continue to negotiate with the government about how we can restore Croydon's finances. This is one element of that. And there's also a request to government to actually look at our debt and whether there's a way forward that we can negotiate some sort of debt write-off for Croydon, or look at the profiling of our debt, again, to try and reduce the burden.
Jason, the council taxpayers will, if this goes through, will be paying a lot more, but getting less for their money as there's some cuts to services. Can you tell me what services are at risk?
Well, we're literally doing the budgets at the moment. So we only heard from government yesterday that they would allow this to happen. So we're working on budgets at the moment, and that will be going through later this month through Cabinet and then on to Council. So at this point in time, we're still working through the budgets. What I'm really keen to do is that we provide those core services well for our residents. At the moment, we provide services and they're not always the best services. So we will need to shrink as a council and probably do less. But it's important that the things we do well. And, going forward will be a smaller council, but an efficient and well-run council.
The Labour group leader, Councillor Stuart King, told the BBC that you personally seem to want to punish hard-working residents rather than get a fair deal from your government. What's your response to that, and what's your take on the deal that you're trying to get from government?
I mean, it couldn't be further from the truth. The last thing I want to do is punish our residents. And, I don't particularly want to get party political about it, but the reality is that this is the cost of Labour in Croydon. This is residents having to pay to put right what the Labour Party did to Croydon over the last 8 years. And Councillor King was a member of that cabinet that made all these decisions. He had no solutions in office and, frankly, has no solutions in opposition either. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. We have to make some really tough decisions. It doesn't mean that it's enjoyable making those decisions, but we have to do it to restore sustainable local government to Croydon.
Speaking of that opposition, the 15% increase is just proposed. It has to be agreed at a full council in March. Labour councillors might oppose it. What happens then if they do?
Well, under the mayoral system, the budget will go to council. Potentially, it could be voted down on a simple majority, and other proposals may be put forward. I don't know yet. But then it would go back to council, and council would need a two-thirds majority to actually stop the budget going through.
Jason Perry, to my listeners who are tuned in now who live in Croydon, to the residents of Croydon, they seem to be in for a rough ride with cuts to services, increases in council tax, and a council that is effectively bankrupt and has been for some time. What would you say to them now, those who are tuned in?
I mean, what I've always said to our residents is that, we will get these finances sorted. It is going to be really difficult to do that. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but I am determined to get Croydon back on track, get sustainable government back to Croydon, and restore pride in Croydon, because at the moment we've been through a terrible period, and as you rightly say, we're 3 times in a bankruptcy position, which no local authority wants to be in. And I really want to try and give hope back to our residents that there are better days ahead, and we will work through it to get to those better days, and we will get pride and sustainable government restored in Croydon.
Jason Perry, Mayor of Croydon, thank you so much for your time this morning.